I didn't notice him at first. Not really. He was quiet, the kind of man who walks into a room without needing it to notice him. Not shy, just still. Grounded in a way that made everything else feel a little too loud. And I was used to loud. I lived in it, the jokes, the flirting, the constant hum of someone always trying to get closer. But he didn't. Not him. We were at a weekend retreat with mutual friends. The kind of place with too much wine, too little cell service, and a big house in the woods where time felt like it bent a little. I had come there with a secret storm in me. Fresh from a breakup I pretended I didn't care about, too good at smiling when I felt hollow inside. I had no intention of meeting anyone, especially not someone like him. He introduced himself like he already knew I wouldn't remember his name right away. Elias, he said softly, without reaching for my hand. Just a glance, direct, brief, and then he walked past me toward the kitchen. And I felt it. Not attraction exactly. Not yet. More like confusion. Curiosity. That low flickering hum beneath your ribs when someone doesn't look at you the way everyone else does, and you can't stop wondering why. That night we all sat around a long wooden table, passing food and stories. He barely spoke, but when he did, everyone leaned in. I watched him from the corner of my eye. How he never interrupted. How his mouth curved just slightly when he listened. His gaze brushed over me once. Only once, and I swear it left something on my skin. Later I caught myself scanning the room, looking for him. Just to see where he was standing. What he was drinking. Who he was near. But the part that unsettled me most? He never looked back. Never flirted. Never lingered in the ways I was used to. And the absence of his attention, it burned more than any compliment ever had. That's when I realized. He didn't touch me at first. And that's exactly why I wanted him to. The house creaked that night with the quiet of too many people pretending to sleep. Somewhere down the hallway, someone laughed under their breath. A door clicked shut. Someone else's secrets beginning. I stood by the kitchen window, barefoot on the cold tile, nursing a glass of red wine I didn't really want. And then I heard him behind me. Not footsteps. Just a shift in the air. The way silence feels different when someone else is in it. I didn't turn around. I just said, "Couldn't sleep either?" "No," he replied softly. "Too many thoughts." His voice was a little rough, like he hadn't used it in hours. It brushed against me. Not his words, but the way he said them. Like he wasn't afraid of silence, like he could sit in it with me and not fill it just to feel safe. We stood there side by side, not touching. The moon caught the edge of his jaw, the angle of his shoulder. I stole a glance at his hands, resting on the countertop, still and steady. "You're quieter than most people," I said, not sure why I wanted to say anything at all. He didn't look at me. I listen more than I talk. A pause. My heart did something strange, like it missed a beat just to make room for that sentence. He asked, "Do you like people who talk a lot?" I laughed quietly. "I usually do." He finally turned to me slowly, his gaze meeting mine like it wasn't in a rush. Like he was searching for something behind my eyes and wanted to take his time finding it. "But not always," he said. It wasn't a question. That moment stretched, slow, heavy, full. I thought he might reach for me then. Just his hand grazing mine. The kind of touch you pretend not to notice even as your skin sings from it. But he didn't. He just gave me one last look, intense, unreadable, and walked back down the hall without another word. I stood there long after he was gone. My hand still clutching the glass. My breath shallow. My body waiting for something I hadn't known I needed. And aching from the way he withheld it. The next morning I tried not to look for him. Tried but failed. He was already on the back porch when I stepped outside with my coffee, sitting in the corner with a book in his lap, legs stretched out, hoodie sleeves pushed up to his elbows. His fingers moved slowly across the pages, like he was tasting the words. I told myself not to stare, not to care. But my body had other plans. "Good morning," I said, keeping my tone light, casual. He glanced up, nodded once. "Morning." Then back to his book. I hovered for a moment, waiting for an invitation that never came. I should have walked away. I should have joined the others inside, where the energy was easy and loud. But something in me craved the quiet. So I sat at the opposite end of the porch, not near him, but near enough to feel his presence like a low hum in the air. I didn't speak again. Neither did he. And yet, something passed between us. In the stillness. In the knowing. After a while he closed the book, rested it on his thigh, and looked out at the trees. I pretended not to watch him, but I was hyper-aware of everything. The curve of his forearm, the soft tension in his jaw, the way his knee bounced once, like something inside him wasn't as calm as he looked. I crossed my legs slowly, casually adjusting my sweater. His eyes flicked toward me barely a second, then back to the trees. But that second lit something deep inside me. There was no flirting. No teasing. No obvious move. Just a single glance. And it meant more than any pickup line I'd ever heard. Because in that look I felt everything he wasn't saying. Want. Discipline. Tension. The kind of hunger that simmers just beneath restraint. And never breaks the surface unless it's invited. He wasn't trying to impress me. He was trying not to want me. And that made me want him even more. Dangerously so. That night it rained. Soft at first, then heavier, the kind of rain that blurs the windows and hushes the world. We gathered by the fireplace, wine flowing, stories overlapping. Someone brought out a guitar. Someone else sang off-key. Blankets were shared, feet tucked under legs, laughter echoing off the old wooden beams. And somehow he ended up beside me. Not close enough to touch, but closer than before. Just one cushion between us on the worn leather couch. Close enough that I could feel the warmth from his body. That subtle heat that comes not from skin, but from proximity. From wanting. I didn't dare look at him at first. I just listened to the music, to the fire crackling, to the sound of his breath. And then a shift. Someone moved, made room, and he slid over without a word. That one cushion between us disappeared. His thigh brushed mine. My breath caught. I didn't move. His arm rested along the back of the couch, not around me, not even near me. But just knowing it was there sent waves down my spine. We stayed like that, silent. Closer than we had any right to be. And still he didn't touch me. I felt his gaze once, slow, deliberate. I turned finally and met it. It wasn't a stare. It was a question. A slow-burning, soul-searching if. My lips parted slightly. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Because in that moment, everything between us was loud. The rain. The fire. The heat pooling low in my belly. Then his fingers shifted barely, brushing the edge of the blanket we both shared. They lingered 2 inches from mine. And that's where they stayed. 2 inches. Not touching. Not needing to. Because the space between our hands felt like an exposed nerve. Vibrating, alive. Pulsing with a tension that made my whole body ache. I should have been frustrated. But I wasn't. I was captivated. Because the almost touch was worse than any touch he could have given me. And I never wanted anything more. I couldn't sleep again that night. The rain had softened to a whisper against the roof, and the house felt quieter than it had all weekend, like even the walls were holding their breath. I wrapped myself in a thin blanket and tiptoed through the hallway, hoping the night would settle something restless in me. I didn't expect to see him there. He was in the reading nook by the staircase, half lit by the moon filtering through the old, fogged window. Knees bent, book resting on his thigh, a mug of something warm in his hand. He looked up when I approached but didn't smile, didn't speak. He just tilted his head slightly as if asking, "You too?" I nodded and sat down across from him, back to the opposite wall, legs pulled up. The blanket slipped off my shoulder, but I didn't fix it. I didn't want to break whatever strange, delicate current had just settled over us. Minutes passed. Maybe more. The kind that stretch and melt when you're aware of every breath, every heartbeat. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. His eyes lingered on mine longer now. Slower. Bolder. Still not touching. Still holding something back. But the restraint, it was cracking. I could see it in his jaw, the way it tensed when I shifted slightly and the hem of my sleep shirt slipped up my thigh. I could see it in the way his gaze dropped. Not like a man who wanted to consume, but like one who was fighting not to. I leaned back, pressing my head to the wall. "Why haven't you?" I asked quietly, not even sure what I meant. Or if I wanted an answer. He exhaled, slow, controlled. "Because if I start," he said, eyes dark and steady, "I won't stop." The silence after that wasn't empty. It was full of every unsaid word, every unfinished thought, every forbidden want. I didn't respond. I just let the blanket fall completely, baring my shoulder to the cool air, to him. His eyes followed it, then met mine again. And in that pause, in that fragile burning space between denial and surrender, I realized restraint wasn't a rejection. It was a promise. The next day felt different. We barely spoke, barely looked at each other. But the air between us was thicker, charged with something no one else could feel. It followed us. In the kitchen when he passed me the coffee, our fingers not quite brushing. In the living room where he sat on the armrest behind me, saying nothing but close enough that I could feel him breathe. Every moment felt like it could break open into something else. And yet we held. That evening the group decided to go down to the lake. A last-night tradition, someone said. A cold plunge. Something to remember. I didn't plan on joining. But when I saw him walking toward the dock, alone, hoodie half-zipped and water reflecting gold behind him, I followed. The others had already jumped in, their laughter echoing from the shore, their bodies flashing through the surface before disappearing again. But we stayed on the dock. Just the two of us. He looked at me then, really looked, for the first time all day. The weight of it rooted me in place. "You're not going in?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Not yet," he said, and his gaze dropped to my lips briefly, then back to my eyes. "Too cold." I could have laughed, could have teased. But something in his voice, low, warm, a little rough, made my skin heat despite the breeze. I sat down beside him, legs dangling over the edge of the dock. The water lapped gently below, but my pulse was anything but calm. He didn't move closer. He didn't touch me. But his presence pulled at me like a tide, constant, steady, undeniable. I turned my head toward him slowly, letting the moment hang. "You're still not going to kiss me, are you?" I asked, surprised by my own voice, how vulnerable it sounded, how hungry. His eyes locked with mine. Something shifted in them, something that made my breath stop. "No," he said softly. Then leaning in, his lips just a whisper from my cheek, he added, "You're not ready yet." My heart collapsed into my ribs. Because he was right. I wasn't. Not fully. But God, I was close. So close it hurt. And for the first time I didn't want to rush it. Because his restraint wasn't about hesitation. It was about intention. And in that stillness between our mouths, I gave the slowest yes I've ever felt. That night everything was louder. The wind. The ticking clock. The way my breath kept catching in my throat like it was afraid of being too quiet. The others were asleep, scattered in rooms behind creaking doors, but I was wide awake. My body felt too alert, like something important was about to happen. I found him outside again. He was leaning against the railing of the back porch, hands tucked into his sleeves, watching the trees sway under the moonlight. He didn't flinch when I opened the door. Just turned slightly, as if he'd been waiting for me. I walked to him without a word. We stood side by side, close. Closer than before. The silence between us wasn't heavy now. It was full of breath and tension and understanding. "I feel like I've been waiting for this moment all weekend," I said. He looked at me, his face unreadable. "This moment?" I nodded. "The one where I stop pretending I don't want you." His breath hitched. Subtle, but I felt it. Saw it. That tiny shift in his chest, like something inside him finally let go. But still he didn't reach for me. Instead he said, "You don't have to say it." "I want to," I whispered. I stepped closer. His shoulder brushed mine and it felt like contact for the first time. I turned toward him slowly, deliberately, every part of me trembling and grounded all at once. "Touch me," I said. He didn't move. But his eyes, they devoured every inch of me. He looked at me like I was a secret he'd been aching to keep, like he already knew the shape of my breath, the rhythm of my skin. And then finally he lifted his hand. He didn't go for my waist or my face or my body. He reached for my wrist. Just his fingertips grazing the inside of it, featherlight, like he was asking permission with every nerve. And the moment he did, my entire body flushed hot. My breath stuttered. My eyes closed. He didn't rush. He traced the line of my pulse, and it felt like he was reading something there. Like he could hear everything I hadn't said. Every hope, every ache, every broken piece that longed to be seen. Still no kiss. Still no claim. But something passed between us, thick and breathless and real. It wasn't about what he could take. It was about how long he was willing to wait, just to be sure I was ready to give. He didn't kiss me that night. He just held my wrist in his hand like it was fragile, sacred, like he was afraid he'd shatter something if he moved too fast or maybe if he moved at all. And I stood there, letting that quiet ache swell inside me, letting it spread. Because it wasn't just about wanting him anymore. It was about everything I was finally ready to feel. We went back inside without speaking. The next morning we packed up, said our goodbyes. People hugged, laughed, promised to keep in touch even though we all knew we wouldn't. But every time I looked at him, I felt a throb just below my ribs. A tether. A truth. He waited until I was alone by the car. I turned when I felt him approach. And this time I didn't pretend I wasn't waiting. I wasn't sure you'd say goodbye, I said. He didn't answer right away. Just reached up, brushed a loose strand of hair behind my ear with the softest flick of his fingers. I wasn't sure I could do it without kissing you, he said. And then he did. Finally. His mouth found mine like it already knew the shape of me. There was no rush, no wild hunger. Just a slow aching press that melted through every wall I'd built. His hand cradled the back of my neck, grounding me as I leaned in, open to him, let the moment wrap around us like the hush before a storm. It was soft, deep, unshakable. A kiss that wasn't about lust but about everything it took to get there. When he pulled back, our foreheads stayed touching. I meant what I said, he whispered. If I started, I wouldn't stop. And for the first time I didn't want him to, but I didn't ask for more. Not yet. Because this moment was already enough to keep me burning for days. Sometimes the most powerful touch is the one that waits. And when it finally comes, you realize restraint isn't the opposite of desire. It's the proof of it.